This is Brad Mullen with Engadget, and we're going to show you the latest device to come out of Meizu, the MX 4-core. If the lines at its launch are any indication, this device is pretty hot coming out of China. And we can understand why. This is one of the most intriguing smartphones we've had the opportunity to review lately, and had a lot of fun putting it through its paces. The first thing we noticed when using the 4-core was that it not only closely resembles last year's dual-core MX, it's virtually the same on the outside. On the front, it has a 4-inch ASV display that offers a pixel resolution of 288 ppi. Above it is a VGA front-facing camera and earpiece, while below, you're going to see two capacitive buttons and a home button in the middle. The home button is slightly raised above the rest of the glass, which means you'll find yourself accidentally pressing it in your pocket or your purse. As for the capacitive buttons, you'll see the back button on the left and the menu key on the right. Both buttons have tiny LED lights underneath that are context aware, which means the back button will change directions as you switch from portrait to landscape mode. The menu button will show 3 lights when you're in an app that offers a menu, versus 1 light when nothing is available. When you long press the back button, it'll double as a standby key, which turns the screen off. On the edges, you'll find a volume rocker on the left, a 3.5mm headphone jack, and a power button on the top, nothing on the right, and a micro USB charging port on the bottom. This port also offers MHL and SPDIF capability. The back has an 8-megapixel camera with LED flash on the top center, with a pair of external speakers on the bottom left. These speakers are not only tiny, but they're a hassle in that they get covered up easily when you're using multimedia in portrait mode. The back cover actually is rather unique compared to most phones because it's comprised of 2 plastic layers. The outside is transparent while the part you actually see is the bottom layer. Taking the back cover off is a challenge, but it gets easier over time. Just take your fingernail starting at the bottom and work your way around the edges, and it'll lift off once you're far enough around the sides. There isn't a whole lot to do when you succeed though. There's only a micro SIM slot here, as well as a non-removable battery. It certainly looks like you could take it out, but don't try it at home without proper tools, and the know-how of course. Interestingly, the LED flash is only on the back cover, with a series of contacts underneath to give it the necessary power and grounding to work. In terms of overall feel, the 4-core's back cover is unfortunately pretty slick, but its smaller size helps us grip this phone a little bit better than larger devices like the HTC One X or the Samsung Galaxy S3. At 10.3mm thick and weighing 4.9 ounces, the phone's also a little larger and heavier than we'd expect. But it doesn't make it that much more uncomfortable, surprisingly. Going over the specs, the Meizu MX 4-core uses a rebranded quad-core Exynos 4412. It's clocked at 1.4 GHz and has 1 GB of RAM and a Mali 400MP GPU. It also offers an 8-megapixel camera on the back and a VGA video chat camera on the front. The battery is 1700 mAh, which is 100 better than the previous MX. Also on the list is Bluetooth 2.1, GPS, and Wi-Fi, but NFC is nowhere to be found. That's unfortunate since the new MX uses Ice Cream Sandwich. As for radios, the 4-core is pentaband HSPA+ with speeds up to 21 megabits per second, and it also offers UMTS and quad-band GSM Edge. Sadly, there's no user-accessible microSD card, so you're going to have to make do with internal storage of 32 or 64 gigabytes. Though honestly, that's going to be plenty for most people. The most intriguing aspect of the Meizu MX is its firmware. While it's technically running Ice Cream Sandwich, its custom skin called Flyme OS doesn't remind you of ICS at all. Of course, the style is more popular in Asia than North America or Europe, and Meizu actually threw in quite a few clever ideas to enhance the user experience, which we're going to go into more detail in our in-depth review. Here's the big thing that you're going to have to come to acceptance of if you decide to purchase this phone. It's a healthy cross between Android 4.0 and iOS. This shouldn't come as much of a surprise though, because Meizu's had a lengthy history of taking liberties with its Apple influence. So how is it more like iOS anyway? Flyme doesn't use an app tray, so all of your apps will show up on the front pages. Also, in order to add new pages, you drag an app over to the rightmost spot on the last page, again, much like iOS. Multitasking also looks amazingly similar. Instead of the Android's method of showing screenshots of the apps in a vertical fashion, you get a small horizontal bar at the bottom of your screen that merely shows the icons, as well as some basic music controls underneath. You still have access to widgets, You have to go through the settings menu to find them. The notification menu is also there, but it adds a few new UI elements. And instead of having the menu take up the entire screen, it ends right below the lowest notification. The Play Store is also on the MX by default, and you can easily download whatever Android app you desire. But there is also a Fly Me App Store that is shown off front and center, but it only holds a fraction of the apps that Google's Prime choice does. Most of the core apps look nothing like the ones you'll see on stock ice cream sandwich, because they've all been fitted to maintain the Fly Me style. It's a very clean interface, but it takes a little getting used to. You can also set up a Fly Me account, which is a cloud-based syncing solution for your contacts, texts, notes, call log, and your calendar appointments. You can also take advantage of Fly Me messaging, which is much like iMessage. If you're sending messages to another Fly Me user, those messages are sent through data, saving you from being dinged on your messaging plan. Another unique feature on the Meizu MX series is gesture control. You can take pictures by waving a finger or your hand in front of the front-facing camera, which in theory helps reduce possible shakiness caused by tapping the screen or holding down the volume rocker. One of the biggest compromises you'll have to make by buying the MX4 core is battery life. While Fly Me gives you 3 tiers of CPU performance as a method of saving battery, the highest level, which runs the full 1.4 GHz, won't give you anywhere close to a full day of juice. If you have no charger lying around next to you, you'd have no choice but to throttle your processor to the lower settings and reduce screen brightness. Performance is not terrible, but we honestly expect a little more from a quad-core device. It's pretty smooth in most tasks, does mostly fine when multitasking, it rarely experiences any lag, and the internet performance is quite good. But we became quite concerned when we noticed that our test unit experiences random reboots on a daily basis. And there are several other bugs that we have gone into greater detail on in our full review. Fortunately, a lot of these issues are software related and should hopefully be fixed in future updates. At roughly $400 for the 32 gig model and $530 for the 64 gig, the 4-core's price is quite reasonable compared to most ICS devices. However, its incredibly limited availability outside of China will make it a tough sell for anyone in North America or Europe looking for a cool new device. And even then, it's difficult to recommend over the $350 Galaxy Nexus, which now runs Jelly Bean and offers an incredibly smooth and fast performance. For all of the finer details on what makes the MX4 core tick, we invite you to look at our in-depth review at Engadget.com. Once again, this is Brad Mullen with Engadget.